One of the most nervous aspects of the cast coming together was the fact that they'd never met each other before. That, you know, we'd gone around the world and we'd picked the best people for each of the roles individually, met them, auditioned them, whatever, offered them the role, they'd accepted the role. We were happy, but the unknown thing was that none of them had worked together before. Most of them had never even met each other before. So there was a very nervous moment when suddenly we're in New Zealand 6 weeks out from the shoot and everybody starts getting off the plane.
When I was getting ready to go out, they said, when you get to Heathrow, you'll be travelling with someone called Orlando Bloom.
I just left my family behind and my friends and my life, and I was like feeling a little bit teary, you know, at the idea of leaving everything behind and my dog and everything. And
I see this guy, you know, and I thought, he looks elf-like.
And this wee fella walked over and he said,
You wouldn't be Orlando Bloom, would you? He said, Billy!
And I was like, oh my God, you're a hobbit. And we just had this huge embrace.
And it was my birthday as well. I'd just turned 30 that day. So we had champagne on the flight. And then when we got to LA, because of the time difference, it was my birthday again. So we had more champagne, you know, because it's the 28th again.
Pete had done something very intelligent, whereby at the start of filming it was the full Hobbits for about 2 months, primarily just us, no one else.
And I really hoped that those four guys would bond, because one, it would make the 15 months go a lot quicker if everybody was friendly and got along. But also for the film, I knew that, you know, having the Hobbits sort of feeling like they really were connecting was something that was important for the movie.
So I didn't know anyone, and there's always that fear of going to a new place in uncharted territory.
I was there for best part of a year. So it was my life for a year, totally away from home, just making new friends.
It's such an adventure. You don't know who anyone is. Everybody's trying to find their feet and interact and try and be sociable. And that was one of the great things, that these friendships formed with the unlikeliest of people.
It was a real kind of Boy Scout kind of, year and a half. It was men together. I mean, every so often Liv would be there and Kate Blanchett would be there, which was such an amazing thing, because you've got these two gorgeous women who got so much attention from us guys because, we adored them so much.
Well, I remember being really nervous because I felt like a lot of the emphasis, because it was all the boys, was on them meeting me in a way, and I was so nervous to meet them. And when I think about how I saw them, it's completely different to how I see them now, but they're all so cute.
And it was this amazing kind of coming together. Here we are, we're all finally here, or almost all of us, and we're gonna set out on this journey. And it was this incredible excitement and anticipation for what we were about to do together.
One of the amazing things about Elijah, I think, is he can sleep anywhere at any time. I mean, I've seen him do it. And, if they don't go back to him for, 15 minutes, he'll just be sitting there like that, for 15 minutes. And then someone will go, Elijah, yeah, yep, scene, right. And he goes. It's an incredible thing that he's got. I mean, he must have been so tired during that shoot. Because, there was times when we had time off. Elijah pretty much had no time off, ever.
I've seen him fall down 3 sets of staircases. And then just get up and go, and just walk off. That is an incredible gift, man. He's like Chaplin.
I sort of appointed myself as his kind of minder. I wanted to look after him and make sure that he was okay. Sean was very much Sam for me, always looking after me, being there for me. Kept locking his keys in his apartment, and he'd leave and he couldn't get back in. And I was like, well, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And I would arrange, to have a locksmith brought out there and get his keys. And so he could continue going about having whatever fun he was having, or talking to who he was talking to. And 45 minutes later, I bring him his keys, and Elijah, here's your keys. And he was like, oh, wow, great, thanks, thanks for taking care of it. I saw the need for life to imitate art. Sam needed to look after Frodo as his sort of primary identity. As the Fellowship started to coalesce, that was the job I carved out for myself.
Sean Astin is just a very cool man. He had a different experience than the rest of us hobbits because he's got a family, of course. He was there with his wife Christine and his beautiful daughter Ali, who we were all uncles to her at the end.
Sean is a very kind of untrusting individual when it comes to safety. He's going to hate me for saying this, but it's true. He always had to check out everybody else's job and make sure that they were doing their job properly, because he didn't necessarily trust that they had it all under control. And there was one such instance when we were in a helicopter and we were in a kind of treacherous mountain area. It wasn't easy to land and it wasn't easy to take off.
Elijah, Billy and I were just having so much fun because we were in helicopters and we were saying to the guy, could you try and flip over, or could you do some banks, or, how close could you get to that mountain? And, if we put a bike down, could you pick it up by its wheels and all that kind of stuff?
And they're talking and laughing and scratching, and I can see that, like, all three helicopters are making their way in, and ours is the first one to go, or second one to go. And I'm like, you guys, shut up. They're talking. They're like, Sean, and they know what they're doing. They're safe. And I'm like, oh, man, this is not good. And Sean immediately starts, like, drilling the pilot of the helicopter. Like, all right, do you know that you've got, like, two guys behind you waiting to come in? Are you cool to, like, take off? And asking him all of these kind of safety questions that I'm sure this pilot had completely under control.
And there was also a point where Elijah and I and Billy and Sean had been dropped off at lower altitude, and we were there for about half an hour waiting for a helicopter to pick us up. And we were throwing stones at trees and running around and, having fun. And Sean was about 100 yards away from us, and he was directing helicopters into land.
You see, you got two behind you.
Hey, Bon. Come on in.
Waving to the helicopter guy, pointing out where the other guys were, and they're waving me, and the hobbits were all making fun of me because I was, like, trying to be Mr., involved.
Billy Boyd's a unique guy. I'm so just blessed to have met him,
Dom's an idiot. No, Dom's great. I was probably closest with Dom because, we had so much stuff together.
Done and done.
I was involved in a close near-death experience, really. It was kind of traumatic. We were filming this scene where the hobbits run to the Brandywine Bridge and get on the ferry. We were rehearsing, running very fast as we could down this wooden bridge, and then jumping onto the ferry.
And then in one of the times, as we ran down to get to the ferry, Dom got a wooden splinter through his foot.
An amazingly tough splinter, I think probably made of titanium.
You think somebody cut his leg off? The sweat was pouring off him.
Like every time I put pressure on my foot, it was just an excruciating pain, like going up my foot.
I thought he was going to pass out at one point, and everybody thought it was something really, really kind of serious.
And I was saying to all the boys, I was saying to Elijah and Sean and Billy, I said, you've got to come over and see them take this splinter out, because it's going to be a whopper, It's going to be like this big, and I'm going to get it framed.
And they take out this tiny splinter, and I was like, I cannot believe you made that fuss over that splinter.
I kept it. I kept the splinter. Still got it.
So after that, whenever, like, Dom did something, he'd start sweating. If anything happened, I'd say, Splinter, are you okay? And he'd be like, "Rrr."
We had a hiccup in the casting process because another actor had been cast in the role of Aragorn, and we just came to a realization that we had cast the role a little too young. It caused us a lot of headaches because we were now shooting the film. We couldn't stop shooting it, and we only had a very limited number of days that we could shoot without the character of Aragorn.
I got a phone call at home saying, do you want to get on a plane tomorrow to go to New Zealand? And I said, for what? And then they said, the Lord of the Rings.
I knew that this was a very, very important conversation, that he'd never met me before. He didn't know who I was. I'd never met him. He'd never been to New Zealand before. He hadn't read the Lord of the Rings.
I just said, well, can I think about it for a minute? He said, well, not very long, but you have till this afternoon.
And we somehow had to try to persuade him to take this role because we thought he would be really great, and we badly wanted him now in this movie. We were in a real bind.
And I hung up the phone, and my son was with me there. He says, what was that about? What was that, Lord of the Rings? I said, yeah, they're making a movie out of it. And he knew this story. You know, I didn't.
And I know that the person we really have to thank for persuading Viggo was his son, Henry. Because Henry was about, I think he was about 11 or 12 years old at that time, and he was a huge fan of The Lord of the Rings, and absolutely was beside himself when he thought that his dad could get to play Aragorn.
So it was nice to have his blessing, you know what I mean?
Most times that you're with Viggo, something amazing is not too far behind. He's like an old-fashioned movie star in my eyes, you know, very gentlemanly and very polite and, you know, very concentrated in his art. You know, in a word, I would describe Viggo as being very inspiring.
Being the natural leader of this group of actors in the Fellowship came very easily to him.
Well, he was always doing things like, you know, like he'd get hold of Kieran, you know, and pretend to throw him over the edge of the mountain.
You can see the wildness in his eyes. He goes slightly mental. Something kind of clicks.
And then he just rugby tackled me for some reason, you know, really, like, bang! Go, I wondered what had hit me, you know, and what are you doing, you know? He's an extraordinary guy, really. I mean, he believes in the truth in everything he does, I think, you know, no matter what it is. And if he doesn't do it.
He's an incredible artist in so many different forms.
Photography and painting and poetry, and he just lives for the moment, it seems. He lives for life.
Viggo is an incredible photographer, and he took a lot of photographs throughout the whole time. And, you know, you sit at your little makeup station and there's a mirror in front of you, and he just, from the beginning, day one, started to, you know, make a collage all around the outsides of the mirror. And by the end of the shoot, there was no mirror left.
They were overlapping. It was full of pictures, and then it became another layer and another layer.
It's all the way up on the ceiling and wrapping around behind and trickling onto our mirrors. And he was thinking of, like, you know, buying the bus and taking it with him, because it was such a brilliant collage of memories and moments.
He doesn't just act the character. He has to somehow become part of the character. He and the character have to blend. And Viggo, I think, saw his sword as being the key into his character. And as a result, he didn't really want to go anywhere without his sword. I know there were restaurants he'd go and eat in at the end of a day shooting, where he'd carry his sword and he'd put it by the table as he was eating. He wouldn't drive anywhere in his car without the sword being in the back seat.
I was on the way out of a Sunday rehearsal, and I was walking out of the gym all sort of sweaty, half in street clothes and half in Aragorn clothes, you know, waving the sword around, trying to keep a mental picture of what we'd just done, sort of, I guess, walking down the street down to where my car was parked on a Sunday afternoon. Waving the sword around and looking like, you know, this sort of desperate Rasputin character to them, probably. Cop cars conversing on me. There'd been some report.
The interesting mix that John put on the thing was that he's not a big fan of rehearsing too much for fight scenes. And his method would be to say to the stunt guys, "How many of you are coming towards me?" And they'd say, 6. And he'd say, "Okay, who's first?" And the guy would go, "I'm first." And he'd go, "Okay, you come at me and I'll hit you with my axe, and then you come and I'll hit you, and you come and he would just take these guys out. And the stunt guys would, you know, tough guys, big tough guys, they'd wear a lot of armor. And they'd say, "Okay, John, try and miss us, but if you do hit us, it's not a problem, we don't mind." He would hit every single one of them. Someone would come at him and he'd just bang, bang, bang. And the stuff that they got of John fighting is brilliant, because it's real. You know, the stunt guys are absolutely terrified. They're just running away from this guy. As you can see, the shots that you're getting are incredible. You know, he just looks on fire, but that is because John was wearing a prosthetic that limited his vision to this, because he had, you know, prosthetic skin, and his eyes were swollen because he was allergic to the prosthetic, so they were slightly shut. And he had no kind of, you know, sideway vision.
I mean, at times you just wanted to rip the damn stuff off and just scratch. Added to which I developed this topical eczema, which meant that basically every time the upper and lower eyelids were attached, I lost all the skin in this area. It was like a skin peel. And within hours then it would swell, and it would turn sort of lobster pink, and then, it would just be covered with lymph. And it was itchy and painful, and one felt very, very self-conscious.
John Rhys-Davies took us to a restaurant, and it was when we'd only just started to get to know John, and we sat down at this huge long table, and he said, "I think I will order the food for tonight." And we said, "Oh, okay, on you go, John," and we were all having a conversation, and the waitress came over. And John ordered, food that would probably have fed maybe 35, 40 people, and there were about 12 of us, He just said, "We'll have 9 lobster and 15 shrimp and 12 red snapper, 15 filet mignons and some grilled mushrooms. I'll have 12 onions and wild boar and, all this kind of stuff, just like pheasants and grouse. And do you have partridge? Bring the partridge," all that kind of stuff. And, the brilliant thing about John is that because he's worked with so many amazing people and worked on some great jobs, all you need to do is give him the merest hint that you would like to hear something about a job that he'd done, and he's off.
One of the training regimes that we set up for our actors when they first arrived in New Zealand was boat handling skills, and I think that most of their training revolved around trying to make each other sink.
It grieves me to talk about this because in a boat situation when there is an elf and there is a dwarf in a training boat and the boat capsizes, let us say that the blame was placed on the dwarf.
He's a huge guy, man. He's 3 times the size of me, and his weight was just like, he just needed to a tiny little moment of the weight, and we were lost.
But there might just have been an element of grim satisfaction in the dwarf's face when he heard of another boating accident which also involved the elf.
I can't believe that John would say that was my fault. Did he really say it was my fault? He's unbelievable, man.
I wasn't very good at the canoes, really. I mean, I could never sort of get that sense to put it over that way, to do a left and all that lot. And I just kept getting lost and having to be towed back in. And Orlando was quite good. He'd practiced a lot more than I had. And he was like, sort of, very graceful. And so any time I could give his canoe a little knock with my oar, I would do, So he's been sent round the wrong way. And they'd say action, he's like, "I can't. It's Bean, he's put my boat in the wrong direction."
I love Orly. I mean, I would pick on him a lot just because I could. I had this thing I refused to drive when we were there because it was on the left side and I'm a little dyslexic and I was just terrified. So Orlando lived really close to me and I would make him drive me around everywhere. And we would spend a lot of time together, and I guess I wanted to watch over him, and it was his first movie, and that could really mess with some people's heads, going from being a student in film school to being one of the stars of such an enormous film, and so I always took a lot of notice of just what he was doing and not how he was acting or anything, but in his personal life.
Orlando was no more selfish than any of us, but he wasn't always as clever at disguising it as the rest of us, because he's not that experienced, so that if he wanted something, he sort of came out and asked for it. Wiser birds go round the corner and whisper and sidle and to achieve the same effect. So sometimes the old lion had to push down the young cub, but not really, only in fun, because he's such an open guy, and his enthusiasm was so shared by us all.
He's a lively guy, and he's a really good guy, got a good heart, and but we're very different in some ways. I'm from up north, he's from down south, and I call him a southern softy, and he calls me a northern bastard.
Sean Bean, he was a real brother in arms, story-wise, but also actor to actor and man to man. He was a most valuable ally to me.
We were doing the sort of scene where I die, and Vigo's laid over me, and talking to me. And we sort of did all my shots before lunch, and then we just said like this, all right, that's lunch. We come back to the death scene later. and then we came back after lunch and shot this, all the coverage on Vigo. So it was quite strange that, because you still, you just break off and have some potatoes and some food and stuff like that, and you go back for your death scene again and die again.
Ian McKellen, when Ian arrived in New Zealand, I showed him a videotape I had with some interviews with Tolkien, and then obviously he got some of those audio tapes that you can get. And Ian based his performance of Gandalf on Tolkien. I mean, he was impersonating Tolkien.
It was looking at myself in the mirror as Gandalf, adjusting the stoop of the shoulders, and in doing that, feeling the voice deepen and getting raspier and a little more precise than perhaps my own is.
And really, in a sense, Tolkien does have a part in our movie, interpreted through Ian McKellen's performance of Gandalf.
Ian shared our trailer, so if you can imagine the 4 hobbits in a trailer with Ian McKellen.
I was sort of partitioned off. I don't know why. Perhaps it was thought that Gandalf wouldn't want to talk to lesser beings.
There was an entrance at this end of the bus and an entrance at that end of the bus. And when Ian was in the chair, we always used the other entrance, out of respect.
But I was rather grateful of having a rather, albeit flimsy, partition, because Elijah Wood in particular, and Dominic Monaghan liked to play music quite loudly early in the morning, and it wasn't always music that was to my taste. So
that became kind of difficult. You'd kind of hear him sort of in the back of the trailer. At one point, just in protesting and some sort of, you can't really figure out what he's saying, but just protesting.
But there was no tension because of it.
He's a very amusing man, great sense of humour, and a very nice man. It's an awful phrase, really, to say that somebody's nice. But when I say nice, I mean he's a very decent person. He's a very fine actor. And he was tremendously supportive, as far as I was concerned, encouraging and a constant companion, you might say.
It's my first opportunity to play with Ian McKellen, whom I've met, but I've never actually worked. I mean, people automatically assume that, you know everybody in Britain. But we've never worked together. And that has been a tremendous joy for me, because he's the most generous of actors. And he works in a way that I like, which is a sort of ensemble way of thinking. In other words, he's not frightened of suggesting things to me and vice versa. And that way, we can combine and work out a scene together.
Ian is a master actor. He has a technique or an approach to film acting which hadn't occurred to me before, in that each time he spoke the lines, it was a slightly different Bilbo that I was working with and reacting to. Because Ian's approach is to willfully make each take different. And so he provided what he called a kaleidoscope of Bilbo for Peter Jackson to eventually look through and shake into whatever configuration he wanted.
One of the great things about Christopher Lee is that he is a huge Tolkien fan. Probably one of the biggest Tolkien fans that I've ever met. He's read Lord of the Rings every year. He reads it once a year and has done so for decades. He actually met Professor Tolkien once. I never had to really talk to him about who and what Saruman was. He just absolutely knows his character inside out, and said to me something very sweet, that it was fulfilling a lifelong ambition of his to be involved in a film of Lord of the Rings, because he has been reading it for so long and waiting for the day that a film would be made, and dreaming that he might possibly be involved in it.
I think I've always rather underestimated Christopher Lee because of the films that he's made, and he'd be the first to say that not all of them were of the highest quality. I certainly haven't seen them all. It's more than 200, isn't it? But I have always been impressed by his physical and vocal authority, and I think he was very well cast.
Meeting Christopher Lee and watching him work on this character was a wonderful experience for me. I mean, I went on, I didn't have days off, but I would run from my set to watch what he was doing sometimes. having to come in and do Saruman and like go 0 to 60 now, boom, and you get a quarter mile and that's all you get, and you better make us believe it. He knows so much about these stories, about this book, and cares so much about it that he is like an emissary, you know, from the mists, like the ghost of Tolkien on the set.
The famous phrase, Ashnas Gurbatuluk, Ashnas Grimpatul, Ashnas Rakatuluk, Akburzanishi Kimpatul. One ring to rule them all.
I think Liv Tyler said, this is just the weirdest set in the world, because, you know, there's monsters walking around and wizards, and also, you know, very small people and very tall people, and it was quite a weird thing at first, I suppose, but it became natural, you know, it was your place of work.
I kind of feel bad for Liv, because, you know, her character was such that she wasn't required all the time, and she would come to New Zealand for kind of stints. So she was sort of left out to a certain degree of the kind of camaraderie that we were able to gain and the experiences that we were able to gain as a fellowship, because we were there for basically the entire length of time.
She became our princess. We looked out for her, you know. It was like, it was a boys' movie, and she came in and sort of gave us that element, that female touch, and it was great to have her around.
Someone like Cate Blanchett or Liv Tyler would show up. It's a different quality, a different energy would come to the set, and it affected the way people behaved on the set and the way people acted.
It was wonderful working with Cate. The image that I most had in mind when I prepared for that scene is when I actually met Julie Christie, possibly the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And it was that impact that I really wanted to try and convey in this scene with Gimli and the Enchantress herself. And it was very easy to do that with Cate, because Kate's got her own beauty and luminous quality herself.
I was really looking forward to working with her, because apart from Lothlorien, I don't really have scenes with her, and that was a scene where we got to speak Elvish together, and it felt really effortless because she was so involved in it and so fluent with the language that it just it transports me when I see it, and it did at the time.
Having actors like Cate Blanchett and Liv Tyler and Hugo Weaving are able and have the power to portray non-humans ethereal. They have an elegance and a beauty.
Hugo's an actor very much like myself, and so we were both of us rather enjoyably out of our normal milieu, and a lot of our off-screen conversation was about being a theatre actor and plays that we'd done or wanted to do. A very congenial, like-minded person who has a wonderful sense of humour, and there's a lot of laughter around when Hugo's there.
Hugo just sort of assumed that role of Elrond with the greatest of ease, you know. I mean, there was I putting all this kind of legwork into creating the character, and I think he just breezed in and made him, you know, he had all the authority of Elrond.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
We had these scale doubles on the movie that were short people to represent the hobbits for the wide shots.
It's Kieran's birthday, what was it, on Tuesday?
Tuesday,
On
yes.
Tuesday, it was Kieran's birthday. Look at the chiseled, the etched, the years of experience found on Kieran's face. And later you'll be able to see him wearing all of our faces.
Kieran was the lord of the scale doubles.
The sergeant, you know, the ringleader, the disciplinarian, and he ran a very tight ship.
Kieran, I hear they're going to set you on fire. How do you feel about that? If it happens, I'll be really happy to do it.
And the person who doubled for me was a girl from Thailand called Fawn, who's just absolutely beautiful. We got on so well. She was talking about wanting to become a stunt woman because she loved all that stuff, except for horses. She hated being on the horse.
This is the best double, right? This is perfect. It's pretty close. Yeah, really good. Yeah.
He was a young 12-year-old boy at the time, and I think they chose him because Martin had this kind of twitchy, kind of nervous energy that I think Merry seemed to have at the start of the movie. He picked it up very quickly and you know, really put a lot into the movie in terms of his physicality. We had to have a very intimate relationship with these people. They had to become us in miniature form, you know.
We had a double for Gimli named Brett, who did all of Gimli's scale work and a lot of his stunt work as well.
4'9½". Also, I'm a black belt in the martial art.
He already had some problems with his knees, and he really injured himself badly, but just kept going. And anytime you were tired, you know, all you had to do was look at him and what he was accomplishing. He was definitely an inspiration.
Sean Astin's scale double, an Indian guy called BK, speaks with a very strong Indian accent, kind of talks like that. Hello, how are you doing today? Nice to see you.
He loves red wine and loves chess. You like red? I've got red wine. Yes, man. Fantastic. And he would play. He's awesome at chess. So he'd be dressed as Sam with a mask of my face. So it was like I was playing a miniature version of myself who was better than me at chess. Him and Sean would go at it. He'd kick Sean's ass every time. Sean fancied himself a chess player. He'd kick his ass.
I'd take his bishop, and then he'd come and he'd try to take my king, and I'd take his king, and they'd run around and laugh and stuff. Him and Viggo were an amazing team together. They were very funny, and they got on very well.
Sandu Suraj na dekh. He can't see the sun and moon.
It was very interesting to see BK shouting at Viggo, you know, get in car, and Viggo would go, oh, very sorry, get in the car. And, you know, it was like a mother-hen kind of relationship. Brilliant. And this day we went fishing, and he caught a fish and ran in and said, there's a load of salmon and they're all feeding around the shore, so just throw your rod in and you should catch a fish in a couple of minutes. We went back that night and Viggo said, I'm going to cook the fish tonight. And I went into the kitchen and BK's screaming at him. Screaming orders, you know, open oven and cook rice and get colander and bring me knife and bring me fork. Viggo's running around going, okay, all right. You know, getting in trouble.
And we sit down, and we've had to clean up his mess and prepare the fish. And we're complimenting him, and rightly so, on his excellent curry. And you know, and he's saying, I know. Yes, it was quite good. And like that. And then I said, what do you think of the fish? And he says, it's okay. You know, like, and then I said, well, you don't like it? And he says, it's not how I would have made it. And I said, well, how would you have made it? I would have made fish curry. I said, well, of course.
We lived, you know, most of it, not together, but we lived in the same city for 15, 16 months, traveling together, late nights together, long hours together, cold weather, everything, all of these elements. And we were doing it together as a force. And in that way, the fellowship became a reality.
And it just completely changed who I was as a person and where I was going, you know? And simply for that fact alone, it's been the most rewarding thing that's happened in my life.
You get to, you know, see and touch and smell and feel the energy of at least 100 people, but more like 800 people over the course of 15 months in a way that, you know, in most of human life, you don't have that kind of closeness with people.
You know, people got crabby, there were bad days and stuff for everybody and bad periods, but there was always a kind of a support system, you know? Mostly unspoken, it was just there.
Lifelong friends. There's not one member of the fellowship that I don't think I'll know for the rest of my life.
Those friendships that are so important to the story as well were a reality, and a reality because of what we had to go through together.
I loved the book, thought it would make a great film, assumed that somebody one day would make a live-action film and that I'd get to go along and see it.
I did find it was probably one of the first literary experiences that sort of really taught me the meaning of how powerful the written word is.
You know, I read the books when I was in sort of 20s, And so it always left quite a vivid memory.
I got hold of a copy from my dad when I was about 15, and he said, I'll give you about 6 months to read it. And I think I read it in about 2 months.
I've been a Tolkien fan ever since my mother first bought the book for me when I was 12 and said, I think you might like this, have a read of this.
Yeah, well, I first read The Lord of the Rings in 1961. And at that point, I was totally blown away from it. It was my first year in college, and I thought, this is something like I've never seen before.
The first copy of The Lord of the Rings that I ever owned was the paperback edition that had a still from the Ralph Bakshi film on the cover of the Black Riders galloping out of Bree was the image. I remember it really clearly. I've probably still got the book somewhere.
Virtually everyone in a significant position on the movie knew the books inside out, had been obsessed with them for years.
The first thing that Fran and I did was to take the 3 books of The Lord of the Rings and to break it down into what turned out to be a 90-page treatment.
I read that in the middle of '97 and immediately was stunned that they'd actually managed to. There was Lord of the Rings, essentially Lord of the Rings. So I became a believer.
It was our first pass at really cracking the code of The Lord of the Rings, is the way that I sort of think of it, as basically, saying, well, the book is a great book, the story is a great story, the characters are great, but it's unfilmable, and it is unfilmable. If you were to just shoot the book page by page, scene by scene, it would just be a mess.
Here you've got a book that's 1,000 pages long. It encompasses a different geography, all kinds of races of beings and creatures. It's a book that took the author 15 years to write. This is a challenging book to try and put on film.
I always find that literal adaptations don't work. I think you've got to find what you think is essential to the book and make your movie of that.
And in that way, things started to happen, like, lines that Elrond would say in the book were given to Aragorn to say in the movie. A line that might appear in Lothlorien was suddenly, put into the minds of Moria. But nonetheless, they're still Tolkien's language. It's still his words.
Miramax, of course, were the first people to finance Lord of the Rings. Credit has to be given to the fact that they were strong-minded enough to take on this incredible task.
We wrote the first screenplay. We immediately were going to start working on the second screenplay.
And sort of towards the end there, Miramax was starting to say, well, we really feel like we want to do it in one film.
And Peter said, there's no way I can tell this in one movie and do it any justice, so I can't do that.
And luckily, Miramax was like, hey, okay, fair enough. Well, you can go ahead and see if anybody else is interested.
We had one chance of continuing with the project. And I said, we've got to somehow convince somebody to make 2 Lord of the Rings films. We've got 4 weeks to do it.
And Peter trotted off to Hollywood, and he went to many of the studios and called upon his old friend Mark Gordeski, who was an executive at New Line. And Mark set up a meeting with Bob Shea.
Bob is impossible to read. He's a completely inscrutable sort of meeting. And you can't really tell how well you're doing. So he made this, Peter and Fran made the presentation, showed a lot of mock-ups, showed the tape, played the tape, lights came up, couldn't read the situation at all.
Bob looked at Peter and said, now, Peter, why would anybody in their right mind make 2 movies?
Which shattered them both, because they didn't quite know what he meant. He said, this is 3 films. Well, thank God for that decision.
Once New Line were on board, we had to basically take our 2 scripts that we'd written for Miramax, and we had to now reorganize these into 3 different movies. And that really involved a total restructuring, page 1 rewrite, basically. Philippa Boyens. She's one of those people that had read Lord of the Rings like once a year, every year, since she was 16 years old, and knew everything about Lord of the Rings. And so we invited Philippa on board.
The collaboration between the 3 of us came down to Fran and I working incredibly closely together, locked in the hotel rooms, locked in the office at home, getting the work done. Fran then taking it to Peter and reshaping. And often we'd come to bits where we knew there was action involved, so we'd just go, they fight. And it turns into 20 minutes of the finished film. Because you just knew Peter was going to come along and do it brilliantly.
And they go.
And the reverse, I have to say, is true. Peter did that with the kissing. he would just say, he'd just hand it over to us and say, well, that's your department.
There are probably some times when it was a bit of 2 against 1, when it was actually Philippa and Fran, you know, going against Peter, and you know, he's like the only guy with these 2 women sort of pounding away on these issues.
It tends to be me on the laptop because I'm the fastest typist. I'm sorry, guys, but I am. Fran always, she likes to write by hand, and her scripts are the ones that are covered with writing. I like to keep my scripts really clean. It's scrawled all over. So she's usually sitting on the floor surrounded by notes, surrounded by the scripts, and lots of paper. And Peter would be, when he was shooting, he'd generally be lying on the couch completely exhausted because he'd just shot right through the week, and this was his day off, and he was working on the script.
The script was literally being rewritten, I'm not exaggerating, every single day and week for the entire 15-month shoot. I would get pages faxed to me several times a week. We were constantly updating them, partially because of the interaction with the actors.
We used to go around to Pete's house, which was great. And whoever was involved in the scenes, we'd go around and kind of chat through what that scene's about. And through that, a lot of the script kind of morphed into something else, you know.
Pete and Fran and Philippa sat us down, Billy and I primarily, and said, write down anything that you are doing that is making you laugh, you know, and try and link it in with something in the book.
There was a lot of plot lines that we sort of fleshed out, had ideas about certain specific characteristics more than anything. The idea of Frodo kind of playing with the ring and what would happen to him.
Philippa and Fran were great. You know, they were so enthusiastic. You know, they were so happy to I suppose, to be working on something like we all were. But I mean, there was great enthusiasm and passion in how they spoke and how they wanted to work with you. And it was never, you could ring them anytime, night or day. And if you had a problem, you could discuss anything with them.
I can remember going out to dinner one night and Philippa and I sitting at the end just dreaming, and her asking for a napkin or a matchbook from the restaurant just to write it all down on, because it was, you know, beautiful stuff what we were coming up with.
Sometimes you would start a scene one day, and under your door at night there would come a few rewrites through. When I say a few rewrites through, I have 2 file boxes that big, filled with rewrites. I have to tell you, some are still in the envelopes unopened, because I was sometimes so tired I thought, oh hell, never mind.
The actors who were now starting to own their characters were, you know, firing ideas to us, which, you know, I mean, some of them are good and some of them aren't, but you certainly gratefully accept the good ideas, you know, and this, you know, Fran described it as furiously laying the tracks in front of the train. It was as it was rumbling up behind you. There was no stopping the train, and the tracks just had to go down.
It made for a degree of sort of controlled chaos. The artistic result was
actually the exposition scenes, and by that I mean scenes that have to explain a lot of detail about the plot.
Early on in the development of the Fellowship of the Ring, Peter hit upon the idea of doing a prologue. He knew he was going to have to go through this long period of exposition, so he wanted something exciting, almost like you would do with a Bond movie.
We really do need to, like, get people into the headspace and let them understand some of what we're talking about, so that when the story really kicks in, they've got a background on things.
Peter was very specific about what he needed. I need to set up Isildur, I need to set up Narsil, I need to set up the Battle of Dagorlad, we need to introduce Sauron, we want to introduce the immortality of the elves, and we want to track the journey of the ring to being lost. And you can't do it in more than 4 pages. And so that's what I did. I sat down and I thought about it. And that's where history became legend, legend became myth, and some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. That's where they came from. That survived, actually. They rang me back, and they were great. They just said, we can't believe you just did that.
There are lots of things in these films which are not in the books. And I think in most cases they're improvements. Because they are scenes that do have to be seen. And they add a lot to it. Other people are going to complain about the absence of Tom Bombadil. Sad, yes, but I mean, this could go on and on and on and on and on.
And the plot of The Lord of the Rings, in our movie, in its most simple form, is Frodo carrying the ring. Eventually has to go to Mordor and destroy the ring. So, you know, what does Old Man Willow contribute to the story of Frodo carrying the ring? What does Tom Bombadil ultimately really have to do with the ring? I know there's ring stuff in the Bombadil episode, but it's not really advancing our story and not really telling us things that we need to know.
And if you look at the edit, we don't know that they didn't go into the Old Forest. We don't know that they didn't meet Tom. Conceptually, we just don't mention it. It's just left untold is what how I like to conceive it. One of the hardest characters to come to grips with initially was the character of Arwen.
She has a very small part to play in the books if you simply look at the number of pages that Arwen is in. And in order to make her a character with some weight, we have had to create more material for Arwen.
We went to the appendix and wanted to draw on the appendix and the story between Aragorn and Arwen and her choices.
There's a snippet from the Lay of Luthien, the song about Beren, the mortal man, and Luthien, the elf maiden, which was a story that is mirrored in the relationship between Aragorn, mortal man, and Arwen, immortal elf maiden.
Steal a firework and light it.
Done.
Supposed to stick it in the ground.
It is in the ground.
Outside.
That was your idea.
Even though I knew it wasn't in the book, I just felt that you need the energy at that point. Because this is a party. You want to see some lightness and fun at the front of this movie because it gets very dark. And you're looking for something unexpected. You're introducing two main characters. You're saying something about them. You're also referencing an event that actually does take place in the book, which is that Gandalf has a firework. Primary things it needs to do is reveal character. We try to do this with Gandalf. Gandalf tells an awful lot of exposition in Bag End, but we also wanted it to reveal something of Gandalf's character, so that it's not just telling the audience the plot. It's also wasted a lot of time, and we did do this. We wasted a lot of time trying to bring so much of the world to life, trying to explain some of the cultures, such as dwarves. And what we discovered is if you want to explain to an audience about the culture of dwarves, you cast John Rhys-Davies as the dwarf, and he'll tell you, he'll show you, he'll bring that culture to life for you.
We could pass through the mines of Moria. My cousin Balin would give us a royal welcome.
Scenes like the Council of Elrond at Rivendell have been fiendishly difficult to turn into cinema because it is a group of people sitting around talking about the plot.
I looked at the script page and I knew that if we shot it as it was written, it would be 30, 40 minutes long. And it's just like, couldn't do it.
I think we approached Rivendell from every different direction you could possibly do. It got to the stage where it was like, don't make me go back there. I can't go back to Rivendell, please.
It's a scene that needs to get the Fellowship together. To establish the ring needs to be destroyed.
What we knew right from the word go was that the ring, as the source of evil, had to be somehow animated to almost become a character in the movie in and of itself. It ends up having personal relationships. It has a relationship with Frodo, has an intense relationship with Gollum, has a powerful relationship with Gandalf and Galadriel. This ring is evil. Being able to work on these books, which I love so dearly, it was working with Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh.
Peter and Fran's sort of relationship as sort of filmmakers is ideal, really, because Fran is so good at putting words down on paper, and Peter's so good at putting those words into vision.
Peter and Fran are a great team working together. They actually they live and breathe the project, and they manage to keep a family life together quite successfully.
Fran, who you're probably not seeing on this, is for a very specific reason, and that one of them needs to remain private. And Peter, by the very nature of what it is that he has to do, is the public face of that partnership.
My abiding image is of seeing Peter early in the morning, sitting in his trademark shorts with unkempt hair, poring over Tolkien. And I would do the same, and I think the other actors did too.
Everybody was respectful of Tolkien and mindful of the novel and had the novel in hand, physically. It was with us. Even at the end, the last day, you'd see copies laying around the set.
We were incredibly lucky to have that as source material, that as reference material, that kind of Bible to keep turning back to.
Ian McKellen was there, and he had the book in his hand. And he came up to me, and he was like, remember, Sam grabs Frodo's hand. The fans will be looking for that. And I was like, right. Oh, great. Thank you, Ian.
Sam must hardly lift your side.
We were that worried about you, weren't we, Mr. Gandalf?
The interesting phenomena with our script writing, as every draft that we wrote, it became closer and closer to what was in the book. It became nearer to Tolkien.
They tried a lot of different things, and sometimes they were thought of going in a different direction from the book, and every time they tried to do that, gradually they find that actually Tolkien knew what he was doing with the story, and they would start going back to where he had started.
I mean, there are things that sort of happened that I don't think were even within Peter's control that ended up changing the film and making it more like the book. It's almost like it was meant to be.
And so, whilst we're changing plot things, we're changing some events, we're changing characters, we're losing characters, while we're doing all the normal stuff that you have to do to adapt a book, we did want to be as accurate as possible into putting his thematic material into the film. Our principal Hobbiton set was in a farm near the town of Matamata, and we shot a lot of the location footage there.
We'd seen beautiful sets before, but this was unbelievable because it was there, it was real, it was as we had imagined it. Bag End was there with the massive tree sticking out of the top, coming down, as we'd seen it in various paintings and images before. It was exactly how we'd imagined it.
Hobbiton was an exceptional location, except that it was extremely difficult to access. All the roads were really paths. It was a very fragile landscape, and yet we basically still had to come in with fairly sizable technology. It just required more physical labour to actually work the location.
Today we're keeping the chimneys up and running. There's 47 chimneys in the location, which all have particular secret little ingredient smoke pots in them to keep them up and running. So it looks like there's a little bit of activity happening in the buildings. So and Maha to you too.
Philosophically, as far as what we wanted to do with Hobbiton, since it was the opening of the film, we basically wanted to start off with sort of a very idyllic place, which is very, expressive of a simple lifestyle, a rural lifestyle, where people are actually very much in touch with nature. And I just wanted to make everyone feel like that it was like a holiday destination. People would love to want to go there.
When you're walking throughout the Shire, you could see what an enviable existence it was for the hobbits.
It's excellent. Everything is absolutely a joy to be here.
It's fun. It's something totally different. I think I would have paid money to be a hobbit, but no, it's been great.
Well, it's the 17th of January 2000. It's our first day back on the shoot since Christmas in the new century, and it was also Ian McKellen's first day today.
You're late.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
And it felt like coming home, and that was a good feeling for me, because Gandalf was returning back to an area of Middle-earth that he loved and respected.
No, thank you. We don't want any visitors, well-wishers, or distant relations.
So what about very old friends?
Of course, once Gandalf walks inside Bag End, then you're into a studio. You're no longer at Matamata, you're several hundred miles away, and you're in a small, confined studio.
Often we filmed in 2 different scale sets. So Bag End was built, for example, in a large-size scale for Ian Holm to appear in, and a small scale, the Hobbit-size scale, for Ian McKellen to walk through.
And in the smaller one, I, as a normal-sized person, could look enormous, because everything in Bag End was small.
The Bilbo's party, which takes place on the party field, we see the party field at Matamata in the daytime being prepared, but when you actually go to the party at night, you're now inside a studio. You're not in Matamata at all. You're in the middle of the day. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've got a studio pretending to be a Hobbit party at night.
It would be great to get, with the fireworks, it would be great to get more applause, you know? We're getting sort of, that, which is nice, it's certainly better. But if we got a bit of, if we got a bit of jumping and actually cheering, more cheering and clapping at each firework burst, it'll be good.
It was great because they had all these extras as hobbits, and this party scene was when they did that, the dance. And something that a lot of people might not have noticed is I play in the band, the Hobbit band. I'm up there with my Hobbit ukulele, whatever it may be.
Bilbo's going to tell a story just like at story time. So we need you guys to be sitting on the mat, just like you do at story time.
Who wants to see some butterflies? Jump up and down, jump up and down. Very good. And 1 and 2 and 3 and...
I remember Pete saying to us, this is the real time where you are hobbits, where you behave as hobbits. There's no ulterior motive. You don't know about this mission yet. You're not worried about anything. You're just embracing who you are as young hobbits, So we really just went to town at that point and had some fun. And I remember the day where the firework blows up in our face.
As soon as it goes bang, you've just got to let it go, okay? So
Peter said to us that when we're holding the firework, it will be lifted up by a piece of string, and there'll be like a...
Well, I didn't know.
Whoosh!
It was your idea.
To just kind of scare us and let the cameraman know when the cut is going to happen for the real explosion. But Billy, being this kind of slightly feminine character that he is, was really quite scared by it and made this girly kind of woo shriek, which I barely got through the take on.
You're supposed to stick it in the ground. Where's in the ground? Outside. That is your idea.
I just get such a fright, and Dom just gave me abuse for it all day.
You're supposed to stick it in the ground.
It is in the ground.
Outside.
That was your idea.
We've been shooting for about 4 months now, and we finally get to start to do things with the villains. Like, we've done a lot of shooting with the hobbits and Aragorn and our heroes, and it's great to finally get the dark part of the story on film to start to set up the sort of the opposition, as it were. You're putting the pieces together and you're realising that
yes, this is... Yes, I've been saying all the time to myself, and for his ring to the sun, ruins.
Yeah.
Almost to myself.
Almost to yourself. Might be quite nice. But it's obviously a big thrill to work with someone like Christopher Lee, who's a bit of a icon, and I haven't mentioned it to him at this stage, but I've been a big fan of his, obviously, most of my life, and watching Hammer horror double features when I was a kid, and it's just sort of fun and a little bit unbelievable to finally be working with someone like that and having them on the set and directing them, and it's a big thrill.
No, my first day in the garden, remember we got to take 10, which is very unusual with me. I don't say that in an immodest way. I mean, there just isn't time in most films. Wait a minute, 10, 11, 12. Surely we got that right. But it was Peter who wanted that line up, that line down, that word, that way, and those words, that way, or whatever. He waited until he got it. And it took a lot of takes sometimes. When we got used to it and realized that was the way he worked, no problem. I remember saying to Ian, I'm getting a bit worried about this, because I think we got to take 11 or 12 or something, and I think I got it right. Oh, he said, you don't have to worry about that. I had 24 takes the other day, and it was only a couple of lines.
Why don't I say, just to complicate it, say your line again.
The 9 have left me no small goal. They have crossed the eyes and
The 9?
The 9?
The interior of Orsank was, as far as I was concerned, papers, dust, and the sunlight coming through stained glass, a mess. And then leading out from that, the more imposing, dark inner sanctum with Solomon's large chair, like a throne, raised up above the very shiny black surface of the floor. It was a place like no other. I'd never been in a room like that. It didn't remind me of anything, and I just thought, oh, I see, this is where Salomon thrives and plots. And so that was a very evocative and helpful set.
The costume was extremely long, and I had considerable difficulty in walking up the steps to my throne. Sometimes I managed to do it, sometimes I didn't. And one day I was driven to distraction when I kept on tripping, and I said, I'm sorry, I cannot get up these goddamn steps smoothly. I can't do it, Peter, I'm sorry, because every time I try, I step on the thing. And a voice came from near the camera saying, well, you did it this morning. It put me in my place.
When did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
When I was dealing with 1B, I was having to do the wizard fight. It was one of those deals where, I was doing the stunt shots between Gandalf and Saruman. So you're gonna hit the ground and you hit the ground and it's like, Jesus.
The stunts were superbly well done. I had no idea what it was going to look like. I had no idea until I saw the film. Works very well indeed.
Second unit's first day was actually at night, and it was the moment with the trees being ripped out at Isengard. That was the first thing they shot. And we were kind of in and out of rain that whole weekend. And that kind of became the mantra for second unit.
It rained for about 2 weeks, and so this whole scene was shot in pouring rain in the middle of the night on beautiful green grass, which turned into about 8 inches of slimy mud within an hour of starting. And it just added another dimension to the whole the look of it. It just added a huge, wonderful shininess, muddiness, grungy, sort of real element that no one could have imagined, really.
The very first day of photography, in actual fact, was a scene on the wooded road where the hobbits have to hide from the ring wraith.
I thought you could turn around and say, quick! Quick,
Rather than go to some remote place in the country to film this woodland, obviously there's many, many wonderful woods in New Zealand. There's actually a park in the middle of the city that it's called Mount Victoria, and it's a wooded park land. It's only 5 minutes drive from the studio, and we thought, well, why travel down to the South Island, or when we can actually just shoot this on our doorstep.
We're going into standby mode then, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Say one more time, all mobile phones had better be off or they'll end up in the ocean. And your radios off if they're open, please. No excuses.
Kara Cunningham, for me, our first assistant director, she's one of those people that you can't imagine getting through the movies without.
She has a great aesthetic understanding of what you're trying to achieve. So if it's sort of crunch time and she has a problem, you do everything in your power to help her out, because all the rest of the time she's doing absolutely everything in her power to allow Peter and myself to perform our jobs to the maximum possibility.
And set.
And action!
Get off the road! Quick!
I knew what I was in for that day when Peter, would bring the second or the third camera in and put it in close on us and say, okay, now it's the most terrifying thing you've ever experienced. It's just this primal fear, and I want you to feel the fear. And he's talking us through this kind of idea of having our kind of spirit and souls and our whole essence.
The town of Bree was one of the very first sets that we shot in, towards the end of our first week of shooting.
I think we shot all of Bree, for the most part, the actual city street of Bree in one night. And we had the rain towers, and it was mad and crazy.
It blew me away that they could take a very small piece of set and sort of build it into the earth, and then film it and pan off of it, and just trust that digitally the rest of the world would be created beyond that.
The Prancing Pony was, like most of the sets, very authentic, really well crafted. It was a place where you step on the soundstage, you walk in the door to the Prancing Pony, and you're there. I mean, it was so well constructed.
And then we had these massive tables that we sat at. So it made us look small, like we were too small for the big tables. Big mugs and, big plates. It made us feel smaller, and it kind of made that world more realistic for us.
What's that? This, my friend, is a pint. It comes in pints.
Oh.
I'm getting one.
It's really nice for the people involved in the Midgewater Marshes sequence to see it back in the DVD.
I think it was important to feel that the journey from Bree to Rivendell was not an easy one.
The Midgewaters were basically us along this journey with Strider, trudging through these kind of marshy, nasty wetlands.
It was freezing cold, and our feet were so cold that you just couldn't feel anything. Meanwhile, you've got Pete Jackson hiding underneath the little trailer, giggling, because he's got his four hobbits and Aragorn going through this water that stinks, and we're falling over, and Billy fell flat on his back, and it was a rough day. And I remember we all went to the pub that night and were drinking lots of kind of hearty drinks like whiskey and mulled wine and all that kind of stuff, because it just chilled you to your bones,
The sword work on the movie was obviously incredibly important. The Weathertop fight was one of the early fights in the film.
Weathertop was the main thing that we rehearsed before we started filming.
The actors arrived about 6 or 8 weeks before the shoot. Having sword lessons with Bob Anderson was always part of their regime.
We had so much fun learning how to do the sword fighting, and we actually choreographed a number of very involved sequences. And I remember when we were filming on Weathertop, I was bringing the full weight of my kind of anger and ferocity to it. And I remember Peter saying, well, listen, you're a hobbit, and you couldn't actually generate that much force to have your sword move the sword of the Ringwraith if you were to strike it. So you got to kind of pull it back. And I remember feeling like, man, no one's gonna see that I'm really good at this sword stuff. I'm gonna have to I gotta just be like a little hobbit doing it.
The irony is that the person that had to be the most accomplished swordsman in the film, which was Viggo Mortensen playing Aragorn, Viggo didn't get cast in the movie until we were a few days into shooting the film. So he didn't have any of the advantage of this training with Bob, and he'd never used a sword before. So Viggo arrives in New Zealand, he gets off the plane, and the Weathertop fight scene is like the first thing he's going to shoot.
So Bob Anderson was my first guide, basically, and he was pretty strict, but really encouraging.
I think he gave Viggo the most crash course in sword fighting that anyone's ever had, because Viggo had to be there fighting these ringwraiths, fighting 5 ringwraiths at the same time, looking like an expert swordsman. And I'll tell you what, Viggo just became, I think, the greatest swordsman that Bob has ever worked with in his entire career.
actually realized that bringing Arwen's voice down to a really low register, how that suddenly just made everything work, because it showed her depth and her age and her wisdom. It was hard, I mean, just purely guttural, you know, kind of lauhirnin. It sounded really weird at times when I was doing it. I thought, oh my God, this is too deep, but it worked. And it was funny when my dad saw the movie for the first time. He's like, whose voice was that? I was like, Dad, you jerk. It's mine, I'm an actress.
Right hard. Don't look back.
Naralim, Asvalov. Naralim.
Cutting! Cut!
They must have hundreds of hours of footage of Jane riding, and she was incredible.
As the truck gets a length ahead, so he's actually just got momentum on, then you could actually set yourself in.
The action that we're doing is like, you know, like yesterday we were jumping over a log and then galloping down a steep hill. Another day, you know, you're galloping along, weaving through trees.
I don't think it was ever a question. I was never going to be allowed on the stallion going at that speed. That was just never an option. I was on the back of a truck on a barrel with, you know, this kind of a horse skin wrapped around it, and I had to do this for 5 days and look scared. And, I mean, that was rough.
The Rivendell location was primarily built at a park called Kaitoki.
We chose it really because it had, you know, quite a closed-in geography, and so that the set that we built would have a sense of drifting off into the forest. So its boundaries were sort of forested, if you like.
So, I mean, the elves, that whole concept of being one with the nature was pretty important, and as a result, Peter had the design team, you know, have this kind of indoor-outdoor feel throughout. So we would have outdoor sets, you know, for exterior shooting, as well as sets outdoors for interior shooting. And we mimic that on the stage as well, where we would have, you know, interior sets of Rivendell that still have that outdoor feel. So we'd have trees on the stage, you know, or we'd have like, you know, matte painting backdrops, you know, of rocks and whatnot in the distance.
But the thing is, I mean, in the end, you still basically, what you do is you look at, you know, you just try and sort of remember the qualities of natural light that are in the environment, or the sort of qualities you want to achieve, and then you go into the studio and now you're basically trying to achieve those qualities, except that you have to do it artificially.
The reason we built Elrond's council chamber inside was we had to be able to control the environment completely, so it wasn't something we could really shoot out at Kaitoki.
You know, we were literally sitting in a circle of actors like Ian McKellen, Hugo Weaving, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Bean, John Rhys-Davies, you know, Elijah was there, and, you know, it was just like I was looking around, I was sitting there thinking, whoa, this is a real lineup of some greats.
Sauron himself forged the One Ring. Molten gold mixed with his own blood. Contains his life force.
The Council of Elrond is a long scene in the book, much shorter in the film, but it did take a long time to shoot.
It dominates most of my memory because the council scene took about, my God, I think it took the better half of like 5 days.
We spent a lot of time there because we had to sort of cover it from more or less every angle. You see all the characters all in a circle. So we had to shoot it from everybody's point of view. And so by the end, I mean, I think we all knew each other's lines because we'd heard them that many times.
It was probably the longest sequence in the movie, which is kind of shocking because I think that there are scenes that seem a little bit more complicated than that. But just pure scenes, that was one of the longest.
You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Where are we going?
Some of the locations were incredibly remote. We occasionally just flew people in choppers, which was a fairly major operation. We usually had to have 4 or 5 helicopters making several trips to the location to get everybody up there. And there was always, serious safety considerations, because if you're stuck on these mountains and suddenly, a storm sweeps in or clouds sweep in, the helicopters kind of can't land or fly, and there's a very big danger that everyone's going to get stranded and have to spend the night on this mountaintop or wherever you are. And so we always, used to take survival kits up there. We used to take tents and rations and stuff up there in case the situation arose that we would get stuck on a mountain for a day or two without being able to be rescued. It was always a little bit tense. And one of the most spectacular mountains was a place near Mount Aspiring, where we did the scene in the snow where Boromir picks up the ring out of the snow and holds it, and that was shot on a very remote mountainside, because I just wanted to be able to feel that we were really up the mountains and we weren't just cheating it on a ski field or something somewhere.
I think it took 10 or 15 minutes to get there, and I remember we flew through cloud, which freaked me out, couldn't see anything. And I was normally fine in helicopters, and I was always really excited to be in helicopters, but it was actually quite turbulent. The weather wasn't perfect.
And all the other guys were great. They were filming it, and Dominic and Billy and Orlando were saying, "Oh man, this is amazing." And I was sort of gripping the seat, just thinking, when are we going to get there?
I was worried when we got there, all Sean would be able to think about, or would be thinking about for the rest of the day, was, I have to ride back, And I thought, man, it's a crucial scene, and he has a moment with the ring. I said, were you thinking about the fact that we would have to ride back again in the helicopter? Were you thinking about it? He says, all the time, the whole time. I said, man, I don't know how you did it, but you really nailed it. After this particular journey, he didn't take any more helicopter rides. He just said, that's it. I'll walk, I'll swim, I'll crawl, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll walk all night to get there by morning, but I'm not taking any more helicopter rides.
Shortly afterwards, we had to go to another location, which was in the Remarkables in Queenstown by a lake to shoot a scene.
Well, Sean absolutely did not want to fly, and said, look, I'll take the ski lift up, and then I'll walk the rest of the way.
We shot there for 2 or 3 days, and our day would begin with everybody flying in the helicopters. And as we flew over at 7:30 in the morning, we'd look down, and there'd be this tiny black speck climbing the cliff. It was almost like a cliff face, and it was Sean Bean dressed up as Boromir, like a human fly on the wall, clambering up this mountainside all by himself to sort of get to the location, because he didn't want to go there in a chopper. He had like 2 hours of climbing to do.
Well, they used to see me from the helicopter, and I was sweating at the end. It was like a real adventure getting over that sort of mountain to get to the set, but I preferred doing it that way.
The scene of the Fellowship and the Avalanche was very difficult to shoot. I actually didn't shoot much of that. That was directed by John Mahaffey. It was shot in a stage with this fake snow.
The simulated snow is a rice-based product.
To taste, it was kind of salty or something. It was kind of like almost like sawdust, salty sort of sawdust or something. It was horrible.
It gets into your eyes. It affects your eyes more than anything else.
He will actually leave Gandalf and go behind him.
Even after one day of it, it left your face really red and raw, it just really got in your eyes and your ears, your whole body. It was a high salt content in it, whatever it was.
Filmmaking is very counterintuitive. When it's supposed to be freezing cold and snowing, you're invariably on a set where the Klieg lights are on and you're so hot that your sweat is pouring down your face.
You had to keep saying to yourself, no, I'm feeling very cold. I'm in the snow, despite the warmth of the bright lights. However, uncomfortable is what it must be to be in an avalanche, and so in the end it's probably an aid to believability.
The exterior for Moria was shot on a wet set. It was shot in a car park right by a railway station, which is really funny when you think about it, because, you know, it looks so convincing as the outside of a lake.
But that was good. It was worth doing one more.
We will do one more. That was very nice. Thank you, broom people.
Hey, Orlando. Yeah. Just be careful turning, because it looks a little like if you're turning that far, you'd probably see it. Okay. Being an elf and everything, so probably don't turn quite so much. Okay.
It was freezing. The nights that we had to do the exterior stuff there, it was some of the coldest nights I can remember. I remember actually Billy Boyd, I think, was probably the coldest of us all.
That evening is the coldest my feet have ever been, to the point that I was almost going to have to say it, like, I can't actually go on. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we'd done this shot quite a few times, and I was becoming really, really uncomfortable. So that's my abiding memory of outside the gates of Moria.
We must face the long dark of Moria.
When I was walking with the staff in the mines of Moria, which had to have an illuminated bulb on top, that had to be provided with electricity, and it travelled along the wire through a hollow staff out through the bottom, and the wire was hidden under the robes into a battery pack attached to my back.
I don't think you were sort of holding it in any particularly, well, I think you were just using it, you know, just as a torch, basically, yeah.
Brian Bansgrove was our chief lighting technician, or gaffer.
DPs like to have a great relationship with their chief lighting technicians or gaffers, and because sometimes, you know, it can get a bit lonely out there. There's not a lot of people that really sort of understand the finer intricacies of light. I basically really appreciated Brian for his eye. It's great when you've got a gaffer on set who actually understands the emotion of what you're trying to do with the light that you've got.
And when you do a film that's visually effects laden and you're dealing with CG characters, you often have to act to someone that might not even be there. If you're acting with a cave troll, for example, well, there is no cave troll.
As an actor, you just had to believe that they were going to create something spectacular that you were fighting.
Peter showed us things, CGI stuff, you know, which gives an idea of what we were fighting. Even though it was thin air, we knew what it would probably look like in the end. And once you get into the rhythm of that, that's fine, you know, you can sort of deal with it, and it becomes very natural.
We'd already faced so many different situations together as a group that it was all right. And there was just a lot more that was invisible, and therefore a lot more make-believe involved in that, shooting that sequence.
And then when you see it all put together, it's fantastic.
Well, the one thing that you're not going to be able to tell at the moment is that we're in this warehouse next to Wellington Airport, and it's incredibly hot and humid, and there's no air conditioning in the building, and we've got huge amounts of light, and it's really giving this place a very subtropical jungle sort of feel.
It's freezing in here, Pete. You have a jumper?
Yeah, I better get my big woolly jacket and my gloves and my balaclava.
I wanted to do something special for Galadriel. I felt that of all the people in the story, she was, in a way, more connected with a spiritual world. And I took my biggest cue off out of the writing of Tolkien, which basically described her as saying, no sign of age was upon her, except in the depths of her eyes, keen lances in the starlight, wells of deep memory. I wanted to find a visual interpretation for that somehow. So what we did, Brian and I did a few little experiments, and we eventually came up with what we called the Galadrielite. We went out and bought many Christmas lights, and we festooned them all over this rig. And what it did is it actually reflects like Starfield in her eyes. Because, you know, to me, it's like a lot of performances in the eyes, and I wanted her highlights to be different to everybody else's in the film.
The scene where the Fellowship depart Lorien and receive their gifts had to be shot on the sort of edge of a pretty riverbank, and instead of finding a river, we actually found basically a lake, a small lake in a country estate called Fernside.
We're just basically pumping a lot of smoke and using the sun and trying to get, you know, God rays and things to make it feel a little bit ethereal, elven, dreamlike, with Lorien.
I had a lot of fun there in that location. They had this huge trunk with like you know, huge roots going off into the water, as if they were almost like little docking areas, these huge roots going into the water. So yeah, that was a beautiful location actually.
There was a dreamlike quality to that whole place, with all of the kind of fog that we put through there, and the fact that we as the Fellowship were kind of together in this sequence as well.
You samwise Gamgee, Elven Road.
Thank you, my lady. Well, have you run out of those nice shiny daggers?
We shot that scene over several days, which I'm really glad has gone back into the extended cut now, because it's quite a nice scene and sort of essential to the story, because the Fellowship are given these gifts which they use in subsequent movies. So I'm glad that we're actually able to let people see that scene now, because it sort of sets things up for the next two films.
Technically, the scene was difficult because when you read about it in the book, it's quite enchanting. You know, Gimli says, yes, there is one thing I would have. I would have one hair from your head. And she gives him 3. Now, on the page, that works, but think about it in terms of film. There's the dwarf with his great big gloves on, and there's this elegant, wonderful woman. And what's she going to be doing? She's going to be doing, all right, then you want a hair sort of thing. Oh, damn. Well, there it is. Can you see the hair? There is actually a hair in my hand. All right? Now, she's got to fish out 3 anyway. All right, so now, what does she do? She gives this hair to me. What do I do with it? I mean, how do I take it? I mean, do I put it in the glove like that and say, oh, yeah? I mean, it is just too cumbersome to film.
What was her gift? I asked her for one hair from her golden head. She gave me 3.
Some of the rivers that we were shooting on in the South Island, you know, they were picked for their beauty, but they were fast flowing and they were very deep. There were currents, and so one of the training regimes that we set up for our actors when they first arrived in New Zealand was boat handling skills, you know, basic like canoe type skills. And I know they had a lot of fun. Sort of. I think that most of their training, which was done off a wharf in the harbour, revolved around trying to make each other sink. But it did ultimately come in very handy, because usually it wasn't doubles in these boats. It was usually the actors themselves. We only had one mishap that I was aware of, which was shooting the scene where the actors are looking up at the Argonath. And that was a very deep, swift-flowing river. And Orlando Bloom was paddling his canoe, and he had a small Gimli. It wasn't John Rhys-Davies, it was Brett, who was sort of a small Gimli, double dwarf size.
Myself and Brett were in this boat, and one of the guys filming grabbed the front of our boat and stopped us because we were going on downstream, and he just stopped us to catch us. But the water was running so fast that when he held onto the boat, it just started to come over the top of the boat and into the boat. And so we just started going down. And I was going, let go of the boat, let go, man, because he was holding onto it, trying to help us.
And these guys went under the water. The boat sunk. And all we had lots of safety boats. They rushed in.
And Brett Beatty was in. I mean, it's kind of funny, except that Brett was in this like armor. Like, he's in heavy armor, man. That's chainmail that he was wearing, and he's got this wetsuit on. And he had like a blow up thing underneath him, a blow up life jacket in case. And he pulled that, and it didn't really inflate. I could see him going down, so I just went like, I was holding on to this guy, and I just yanked him up out of the water, and he was like, and I was holding him up like this, and he was like going, like, he was freaked out, man. And we chucked him up, and he was okay, but it was like, for a minute there, man. I mean, that could have been bad.
I think Orlando was more embarrassed than anything to be the one member of the Fellowship who kind of sunk his boat whilst on active duty.
And those boats, as beautiful as they are, were pretty, pretty tippy. They were kind of flimsy in a way. And because of the scale issue, it was Kieran Shaw, was Frodo. And I remember that when we did the wide shot, we were really moving down that river. And Kieran, we're doing the first take, and Kieran's going, don't worry about me. And I'm like, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm trying to talk without moving my lips, you know, 'cause and he goes, well, if we flip over, I said, we're not going to flip over. And he goes, if we flip over, just save yourself. I can't swim. I said, what? You know, I couldn't believe it. And then I got really nervous. You know, like if someone's watching you driving, you start overcoming. And I was like, every eddy now became fraught with, you know, possibility. And after that take, I said, you're kidding, right? And he goes, no, I'm even afraid to take a bath. I'm like, Jesus.
Towards the end of 1999, and like 2 or 3 months after we started shooting, we ended up filming our first really big battle scenes, I guess, of the trilogy, and they were the Ammon Hen fights at the climax of the Fellowship.
This is a fight routine that happens on top of this hill, and you guys are charged up the brow of the hill, and you're flooding over here, and Aragorn here, Vigo, gets to fight you single-handedly. One versus 100.
Your killing machines move forward with the intention that you're going to kill. So keep it fluid, not stilted. Give it the best you can. Thank you.
Richard made this impassioned speech, you know, for the sake of authenticity, this and that. But it was about bloodlust, about don't be afraid to maim, and just, I mean, you know, he was trying to do justice to Tolkien's vision, you know, and so he was just, there is no mercy, there is no, and these guys, you could see them shaking with anticipation, and I looked over at Pete, and then I looked over at the stunt coordinator, who was just going like that, who was feeling the same as I, which was, these guys didn't need any more you know, encouragement to, like, you know, beat the snot out of me. I was like, I'm not gonna be ashamed if I have to just turn around and run my ass off down the hill. It's no problem. You know, I got a long shoot ahead of me.
It was blazingly hot. It was like, you know, over 100 degrees, and these poor guys were wearing this, you know, all this leather and fiberglass costumes with rubber masks.
Warm in there. Very warm in there. Cheers, guys.
Coming. And now turn around, yep, turn around. In the stomach. Yep.
Stomach?
There.
Gotcha.
The great rules of karate are, if you cannot stand, you cannot fight. If you cannot see, you cannot fight. If you cannot breathe, you cannot fight. Sure enough, there I am, my helmet over my eyes like that. And in truth, very, very hard to fight.
I think I have to say that Lurtz, who is a general of the Urukai army, is potentially my favourite character. He's played by an actor called Lawrence Mohure, an imposing gentleman even when he's not in his prosthetics.
Strike a pose and let's get with it.
And stay on it. Stay like that.
No!
Cut it. Cut it!
Barry Osborne directed most of the fight between Aragorn and Lurtz.
When you're running into that next shot, you really take off. And action, Vigo. On this movie, I have so much to do that it takes actually quite a lot of effort to be able to do this. And I find myself conflicted. But right now, finishing the movie seems to me to be the most important thing, and helping Peter out in that fashion is appropriate on this film.
Okay. Oh, well, that looks fine. Are you going to be okay with light and stuff? Have you got some lights up there?
Are you going to tie it off?
Blasting in there. Okay, well, you better shoot it faster before it gets too shaky.
Well, I don't think, we don't want to lock it off long enough because it's just...
But we have to keep him humid. We have to keep him feeling happy and good. So we just give him a camera and a crew, and he's as happy as Larry, stays off our backs. It's a brilliant scheme.
Right, Barry?
Thanks.
It's all right. I said that. I know you did. Okay, yeah, now Barry's got a motivation now, you see. You won't. So come towards us, Barry, and raise your sword. That's it.
Like that.
Anytime you make a movie with the sort of physical action, you know, that we have, there's always a danger of people getting hurt. I mean, you obviously take every possible precaution that you can, but you know, with that, people do get hurt. Fortunately, on the film, we never had any particularly serious injuries. Not really serious, although one of the worst ones actually happened to Sean Astin. And it was a relatively simple shot where Sean had to be on the shore of the lake, and he had to run out to the boat.
I'm running at a dead sprint, and I get in, and my left foot and as my right foot lands about 2 feet in the water, just this huge sharp pain, and I grabbed onto the side of the boat and I just looked down, and it hurt so bad.
Let's sit him down and have a look at his foot. Mikey, where are you? Let's sit him down and have a look at his foot. You want to sit on the bench, or do you want to sit on a chair?
His foot had virtually been completely impaled on this shard of glass.
When they took the prosthetic off, it was a big, old, deep gash in the foot. I mean, it was a substantial cut.
Doing the same action again.
Oh my God!
Don't let any of that run over the top.
It's a lot of blood,
So
man.
Mike will get a
It's a lot of blood.
Probably gonna need a bit.
We could dry it off because we need to.
There was this sort of globular thing, this mass that came out of the slit in his foot, that I was fascinated with.
Master Frodo can play with my clots anytime he wants to.
I'm fascinated by his blood clot.
We were a good hour to an hour and a half's drive out of Tiana. It was a long way, it was quite remote. We called for a chopper to come in because we knew we needed to get him to a hospital very, very quickly because there was a lot of bleeding.
So the helicopter guy came out, and we jumped in, and it was Jacques Cousteau's pilot. The guy who had flown Jacques Cousteau around on some of his expeditions, which I thought was really cool.
I'm kind of glad on this movie that I got to direct it and I didn't have to play a hobbit, because, you know, those guys had a fairly arduous time of it. They had to get up at some unearthly hour.
How lucky are we to be in New Zealand to see this? That's half of why this movie is so amazing. This kind of stuff, every day. My day would start within the 5 o'clock hour, every day. For the most part. It's sometimes 4:30. That was lovely. The Hobbits would always start early because we had the prosthetics in the morning. Our makeup took mostly about 2 hours.
Glue was painted to the bottom of your feet. Then you would slide into these prosthetic feet. They would then hair dry glue around the seams of your feet and paint them with airbrushes and paintbrushes.
Standing up at 5 in the morning. And the whole time we're begging to sit down, but they don't let us.
They couldn't sit and have their feet glued on because the way that their ankles would sort of be bent in the wrong position. So they had to literally just stand up when I'm sure they'd rather be in bed.
We have to be really honest and say that when the days that we don't have feet, we're really excited. Because A, that means we have a later call, and B, we don't have to stand up for an hour and a half.
I don't think my wife knows as much about my feet as Sean Foote. And isn't that ironic that Sean's last name is Foote? F-O-O-T-E. Sean Foote. O-E?
No E.
No E. I want to put an E on there because it's just too weird that your last name is Foote and that you work on my foot. My foots. No E.
So the prosthetics would be put on, and that would be an interesting time in the morning. It was always kind of it was our time to be with each other. We went through phases as well. There was the kind of reading phase, where we'd all be reading and we wouldn't talk.
Then other times we'd be really into music, and the CD would be blaring and everything would be up, you know, just different kind of moods that everybody went through.
Every morning I'd bring a book about this big, pick about 3 CDs to listen to because I'm here for so bloody long. And then we'd go on to the makeup chair, get our wig and our ears put on. So the Hobbit ears actually encompass the entire ear and kind of fit on like, well, like a glove.
Like an earmuff.
Like an earmuff, but completely contoured for the ear.
The thing that's weird about the ears is, in terms of acting, is they're foam, latex, and so they actually absorb sound. And when other actors are performing, and sometimes it's hard to hear them.
And then, you know, maybe we'd get our rewrites, because often, literally every day, the script was being rewritten.
So anything that we'd learned the previous night made no sense because we would have revised script pages. I would say probably 90% of the time we arrived on set.
Not because we were in trouble in any sense, but it was really to get as close to Tolkien as possible, and I think we were always trying to incorporate more of Tolkien into the movie.
I actually have a whole miniaturized script so that if I want to see like where we've come from or where we're going to, and we have other notes and stuff, but it's really neat just to be able to have something to walk around in, and when Peter's talking about stuff and you can kind of, I don't know, it's just a useful tool.
If there was time, we'd nip and get some breakfast. Sometimes there wouldn't be time, there'd be a rush on, so we'd get breakfast brung to you. I'd normally have porridge. In fact, I don't think there was porridge on set until I kind of asked for it, and then there was always a big thing of porridge. So I think I kept everyone healthy on set because of that.
The day has now begun. I'm now completely transformed into a hobbit. All that I have left is to put on my wardrobe. So I've got my feet, got my wig, got my ears, got my dirt. I'm ready to go. I think I'll go in my trailer now, listen to a little music, relax, and get ready for the scene.
If you ever actually made it to set, that's the thing about making movies, is it is such a cliche, but it's so true. Everybody rushes because you have to be there in front of the camera when it's ready to go. But if something goes wrong, you know, a light goes or need to reset something, then it could be another 5 hours. As we were filming the movie, there was a making of that was always going on, so there was normally a camera on set. And, you know, if we were ever really bored, been hanging around to do a shot for a while, we'd try to do a little skit.
The phone rang last night, and there was someone on the other end.
It is that thing where you get so used to each other's company and so comfortable with each other that some of the things that you're getting up to keep yourself entertained just start to become a little bit off-centre.
So this Elijah guy, you know this Elijah Wood guy?
Yeah.
Have you spoken to him?
Yeah, a couple of times.
I was speaking to him today, and he's just been a real idiot.
He's up for it.
Hey!
Hey!
How are you? Sit
How are
down,
you,
man.
How are you?
Hey, good.
This party seems cool.
Elijah Wood.
Hey, I've got a present for
Down,
you.
Monahan.
I've got a present for you.
A present?
Yeah.
What for?
Oh, just, yeah, nothing.
Yeah?
Just something I picked up.
You deserve one, man.
That's cool. You guys rule.
I'm gonna go and get that.
All right.
See ya.
He is a f***ing.
Next time, I'm gonna punch him right in the
I already did that to him the other day, man.
Yeah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
he f***ing cried as well. He's like,
Hey, mate!
Hey!
Hey! What's going on?
Got an apple.
Hey!
Hey, you guys. I've never met friends like you before on a set.
Shut up.
No, honestly, I mean it.
Nah, I would agree with that as well.
You know about my apple?
Never been so close to
No.
two people in my life.
Yeah.
You know about my apple? Who is that? Be an extra.
I have no idea.
He's jabbering all the time. I sat down, talking to you, trying to run my lines.
Right.
Jabba, jabba, jabba.
Yeah, constantly trying to interact.
And I'm busy with it.
Hey! What's going on?
Billy boy.
Hey, how are you?
Hey!
All right.
Billy boy!
So we need to get back up in a minute or two, I think.
Were we going back up?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't wait to do this scene with you.
Yeah, we'll have fun, eh?
You're just so giving.
I think that's us.
All right, come on, let's go.
I remember once, me and Dom were doing this thing, just bored, you know, we're out in location. And he says, how fast do you think you could touch every table in this canteen? It's just me and him. And I was like, I reckon I could do it faster than you anyway.
The game that Billy played more than anything was to watch me run around and touch the tables and then to forget to have started this stopwatch and just watch me get more tired, you know, and the time's going longer and longer and just laughing and giggling to himself.
And then I go to do it, and as I'm running around, my foot comes off, you know, and flies off. I'm not going hell wetter that my foot's come off. And just at that, they say, okay, you're needed on set. And I've got this foot, you know, it's going to take like half an hour to put on. You just feel like an idiot.
Of course, the biggest crime I could commit as a director was to have their feet glued on, but then, because of the angles I was shooting that day, to somehow not see the feet. Sean Astin in particular kept a running tally, and by the time he was finished a 274-day shoot, he could tell me exactly how many days he'd had his feet glued on and they weren't photographed.
50 separate days. We got to 50 that we had the feet applied when they weren't actually even seen on camera. In terms of the actual work itself, Peter would wait until we were all sort of present and he'd sort of talk us through things.
And then we'll, then it's down, and then Billy says, oh, look, Mary, it's Frodo.
Hobbits are small. They tend to be about 4 feet tall. 3'6" is kind of the average height of a hobbit. Obviously, we're not that size, so there was an interesting logistical issue with making us that size. And it wasn't one trick. There were a variety of things that we did to accomplish that final goal of the size difference between the hobbits and the rest of the characters. We had scale doubles, for one, and we, as the hobbits, had to direct them, which is interesting. So come up, run, and then just sort of, you know, maybe plant your front foot out there and just sort of settle yourself down with that as a bit of a, you know, the little tiny details that made up kind of a simple performance for us. We had to kind of work them out with the scale doubles. And that was required of us pretty much every day. Brilliant. Thank you, Kieran.
The most complicated things were probably false perspective, whereby if I were to be doing a scene with Ian McKellen, he would be in the foreground of the shot so that he would just look bigger, you know, because he'd be closer to the lens, and I would be back from the shot, but we would make out that we were level with each other.
Amazingly simple in the sense that it is literally just one person in the foreground, one person in the background.
Elijah will be, we'll look at the eyes, Elijah will be roughly down here. He's not directly opposite you, he's a bit lower, a bit further down the tunnel.
But also logistically for us as actors, that posed the problem of eyeline.
From the hand of Sauron himself. No, don't look at me. Sauron himself.
Because we couldn't look at each other during the two shots, which is a weird thing because you rely so much on the other actor's eyes when you're acting. It's important to have that connection, and we didn't have that connection for those kind of shots. And then there was also blue screen.
Here we go, and action!
And that was incredibly complicated, and I was really nervous because I was like, this feels really weird. I'm walking on, you know, a blue mat, and there's blue around me, and there's no reference at all to remind me of the place that I'm supposed to be.
Did it look all right? Yeah, you can use a little bit of width down here. Once you're down the step.
There's a scene with Gandalf and Frodo in Bag End when Frodo gets up from the table and says, you know, we'll hide the ring and no one will ever find it. And suddenly I had to kind of remember my marks, hit a mark at a specific place at a specific time so that it matched the timing of the shot that they got with Ian. No one knows it's here, do they? Do they, Gandalf?
Probably the most frustrating thing for me was working on my knees.
This is probably, I mean, the configuration with Billy and Dom is not quite right because Frodo had a clear access through.
Just the freedom of movement that you have from having your legs, you know, positioned on the ground is a lot freer than having your knees because there's a sense of overbalancing or underbalancing, falling one way or the other.
And so you've got all these kind of different technical and logistic and cinematic tricks going on in your head, but at a certain point, you have to just kind of squeeze that out of your mind and remember what the story is and remember what your character is and have a profound emotional interaction with your imagination on camera.
I think I'm getting the hang of this.
We'd wrap generally at about 8 o'clock.
Birthday boys are going to Alcove tonight, so if anyone wants to join us.
Where's that? What town's that?
It's in Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yep.
The drinks on the line, yeah!
There goes my podium!
For the year.
So I hope to see people there. That would be lovely.
We had to take off our costume, then go into makeup and have our ears taken off and our wigs, which took about 40 minutes, and then have our feet taken off, which took close to about an hour, you know, in kind of soapy water with people hacking away at your feet with brushes and metal sticks and pipe cleaners and toothpicks and all that kind of stuff.
Once the feet were off, if it was a Friday, we might have a beer as well, which is nice. You sit there with a beer, somebody rubbing your feet. Come on, does it get any better? I don't think so.
That's a typical day in the life of a hobbit on Lord of the Rings.
For me, Hobbiton was going to be the thing that was going to take forever. I just couldn't imagine we'd find Hobbiton intact as we found it in the back, you know, the backside of a big plot of farmland outside of a town, little town called Matamata in the North Island.
And the lane sort of went up through here. Then that way you can stand over near where Rick was.
I remember the first time we went there and went through this one gate, and there was Hobbiton. You know, there was the lake, there was the Partyfield tree, there was the hill that Bag End sits. It was just right out of the book.
And maybe the Partyfield then is, you know, just over the back there. It overlooks the water in a way, doesn't it?
To this day, if you were to go visit it, it will always feel like Hobbiton. It's just a great spot.
The Weathertop Ruins, we found a brilliant location for it. It was up in the Port Waikato area, great sort of limestone washed away. Standing on top of Weathertop, there's the road in, there's a hilltop, and it drops away quite rapidly down below. This is the hollow on the western side of Weathertop. It's got a good size to it.
In terms of the location, we never intended to build anything. The Weathertop that you see in the movie exists in physical form in terms of the wide shots because of a visual effects shot. And with respect to once the hobbits are at the summit and surrounded by the wraiths and then saved in turn by Aragorn, you know, that's actually just a soundstage. So the location itself never had to deal with a build, and as a result, that was the location that, you know, we could sort of, you know, hump the equipment in or chopper the equipment in to kind of do on the day.
This was the great watchtower of Amundsen.
The horse chase basically culminates in the riders chasing Arwen across the river. She gets on the other side and sort of goads them across. And what my concept is, because the scene is made up of like three primary kind of angles, it's like there's the angle which is the profile where you've got Arwen on one side, the other horses starting to cross, and around the corner comes the flood. Yeah, there is actually a road. There's an old miners' road up here, and there's a whole lot of old buildings up there, old kind of miners' buildings. The foundations of them are up in the trees there, because this was actually the ford. I mean, if you imagine, before that bridge was built there, in this particular place, there were 10,000 people. And here in Skippers, this is the township. There were 10,000 people at the height of the gold rush, and that bridge didn't exist, and this was actually their ford, the real ford.
Kaitoki is a water collection region for Wellington, for the whole city of Wellington. But it has beautiful forest, and it has a lovely river running through it, and a sort of Rivendell type feeling.
Kaitoke is one of those places that it's a national park, and it's the kind of place that you would go and reflect at. You know, sort of a very sacred place that you can go and rest, and it's just a really special spot. It's a very specific place that you know, we built our sets to be able to take advantage of the beauty of the area, but still keeping it kind of in that Tolkien feel. And it worked perfectly as the backdrop of Rivendell.
This is the idea with this is it's the Lothlorien woods. Now we're in a different forest, a different part of the story.
Paradise is this beautiful forest area just out of Queenstown. You drive to Glenorchy, it's about an hour's drive, and then beyond Glenorchy into the real wilderness, you find this beautiful forest called Paradise, and it's essentially an old beech forest that has a major canopy of leaf, and underneath the ground is covered in very soft, very vibrant green moss, which just covers everything. It's a nice sunny day here at Fernside and Featherston. This is the Silverlode riverbank. It's a beautiful location, and the access is good. One of the huge attractions of this particular area was lots of lovely oranges and reds and greens in the leaves, which we have lost a bit with the onset of winter, but we've managed to add a few, you know, in the right places, so it's working okay.
Let's just go up to the bridge and then we'll just have a little bit of just a cruise back. Okay. And it would be good then to get the boat up here if we could, the Elven boat. I mean, yeah, even if we just jump off onto the shore somewhere if you need to go back. Oh yeah, no worries. So here's the bridge, right. So we're just looking, Andrew, for some sort of a shot which would give us the, you know, the gorge that leads up to the Yarganan. Yeah.
Now see those sandy banks down there at the end of the gorge?
Just hang back. Let's hang back and let them get a little bit further away. Where we could stick the big statues down there somewhere. The Yarganan.
We split Amon Hen into sort of three elements, essentially. There was the Nen Hithwil Lakeshore.
This is an absolutely gorgeous piece of landscape, and if someone doesn't find something to help get this into the show, you're all mad.
That's probably one of the nice ones. Yeah. Around the bend.
So this is the sort of way we'd shoot them arriving on the shore of Nen Hithwil, just to get a sense that the forest comes right down to the shore.
Paradise, we shot the Pathgallen section of it, which was the approaches to the Amon Hen seeing seat, and where there was a lot of battle between the Fellowship and the Uruk-hai.
Yeah, against that tree.
Yeah, we do have to find a good place for Boromir's little death scene with Aragorn. So yeah.
From deer to cats.
Aim and Hen seeing seat we did alongside Lake Wakatipu, which is sort of closer to Queenstown, on a beautiful little promontory above the lake.
Only a couple of carrots and some cabbages and those 3 bags of potatoes that we lifted last week, and then the mushrooms the week before. Yes, Pippin. My point is, he's clearly overreacted. Run!
Elijah has to fall down onto the ground.
It was very serious shot.
Falling down onto Billy with me by his side near his anal passage, and as he fell down, he let go a little burp.
Right, that was great. Fantastic. Okay. All right. Thank you.
That was great, guys. Have you got one more in you?
Me and Dom were doing a lot of good acting as well. But
I can't wait to see if it shows up on the sound.
And my eyes were nipping,
gonna show up on
and
the
it was
DVD.
really, really sore. And I was almost sick. And even the thought of it now.
My nose and ears were bleeding.
Yeah, they were.
You gotta love your castmates.
I think we'll just have another ad.
So this Elijah guy, you know this Elijah Wood guy?
Yeah.
Have you spoken to him?
Yeah, a couple of times.
I was speaking to him today, and he's just been a real idiot.
He's up.
Hey!
Hey!
Sit
How are
down,
you,
man.
man?
How are you?
Hey, good.
This party seems cool, isn't it?
Elijah Wood!
Hey, I've got a present
Down
for you.
Monahan?
I've got a present for you.
A present?
Yeah.
What for?
Oh, just nothing.
Yeah?
Just something I picked up.
You deserve one, man.
Oh, that's cool. You guys rule.
I'm gonna go and get that.
All right. He's a
Next time, I'm gonna punch him right in the
I already did that to him the other day, man.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He cried as well. He's like,
hey, mate!
hey,
Hey!
what's going on?
Got an apple.
Hey!
Hey, you guys. I've never met friends like you before on a set.
Shut up.
No, honestly, I mean it.
Nah, I would agree with that as well.
You know about my apple?
Never been so close to
No.
two people in my life.
Yeah.
You know about my apple?
Who's that? Be an extra.
No idea.
He's jabbering all the time. I sat down, talking to you, trying to run my lines.
Right.
Jabba, jabba, jabba.
Yeah, constantly trying to interrupt.
And I'm busy with
Hey! What's going on?
Billy boy.
Hey, how are you?
Hey!
All right.
Billy boy!
So we need to get back up in a minute or two, I think.
Were we going back up?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't wait to do this scene with you.
Yeah. Well, they're fun, eh?
You're just so giving.
I think that's us.
All right.
Something sort of that's quite, you know what I mean? It sort of has a.
That's essentially what it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Well, why don't I quickly go bang off this pocket shot so we can free up Richard and the other camera. You guys set up this for him.
Where is the shot?
Cut it there, please. Okay, so string on one. Strings and shot. Strings on two. Very slow.
So Liv comes up and grabs them back, pulls them back into the retrieving them back which would be nice. Just really.
Well, should we do the hit as well if we're going to do that? Or no, you're happy with the hit? Do you want a one like that? I've got it training.
Guys,
We have the worst luck in the world.
this rain's going to fresh the costumes, just sort of give it a chance to ease.
While most people are at home trying to save their houses and sandbag their belongings, we make a film.
Hey, when are our scale doubles ready, Karen?
We're on you. It's all the turbans to do.
Richie's made snow just to keep you happy. It's just absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
As they're slipping it off, just slip this chap back away.
Well, you'll be here and they'll be there. You to the south of the head. You disappearing. We can have you going behind the bush and then.
At the moment, because we may have to come back.
And the other thing is everyone's starting to get a little bit cold.
I'm just saying, I'm very cold. I've got people shivering and horses shivering, and it's, I can see
Well,
people
should we pull out now, eh?
I actually think we should.
Okay, okay, guys. Let's
Into the thing there. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, it'll be good. It'll be great. It'll actually make it a really good shot.
You think so?
A really nice shot. Yeah. Okay. Good.
I think we're late getting away. I think we're a little late getting away. We need to just whiz another one.
Just to try and get in a bit tighter. But we might need you at the moment. That just the way that your staff falls, it goes across your face a little bit. So might need to either just hold it back slightly or to take it out slightly. We've been shooting for about 4 months now, and we finally get to start to do things with the villains. Like we've done a lot of shooting with the hobbits and Aragorn and our heroes, and it's great to finally get the dark part of the story on film to start to set up the sort of the opposition, as it were. So it's good. It'll be fun to do this stuff.
Alrighty, we are ready, folks. We're shooting this light.
It's very bizarre, isn't it? It's a good one for the old DVD.
So you lie. I gotta take mine with me when I leave.
Do you want me to let two times? I'll go down, I'll sit and go to the next hole.
Yep. Waiting for us myself.
My name's Katrina Talbot, and I'm the back half of Bill the Pony. We have to actually have a bit of practice on every terrain because it's different. In the snow and in the mud and on the mountainside and in the swamp. We started with an agency in Wellington Actors.
Okay, can we have a bit of room, please?
She said if we wanted to get involved in stilt walking, then we got called in to do Bill the Pony.
What we're going to do, you can see where these footprints go up the hill here. When we're all ready, we're just going to have you walking up the footprints, following in single file. And when Michael, who's playing Gandalf, gets to the end of the footprints, he stops, and everybody will position everybody behind there, and that's our starting position. Piran is then who's playing Frodo, is going to be doing a little fall and a roll down the hill. Vigo's going to jump out and grab him. And then if we can just run the scene. Now this is just a wide shot, and we're only going to need the basic big movement, so don't worry about dialogue. As he falls, and then you take it. And you're going to fall to your right and roll. And fall, Karen.
we've got the scene where we're walking through the snow. Using this product, we can make something that people can walk through. And if you leave it overnight, it'll get very stiff. And then we can use it for other bits of snow. And they use it to insulate houses. It's amazing stuff. It's the best snow we've had.
I'll be full of snow on the day and making an avalanche down here full of our foam snow. The actors will be going along the top of the set and creating an avalanche for them to be buried in.
So you see them looking up going, what the hell? And the veil of snow comes down, You're not quite sure what's happened. You see Gandalf be pulled off the rock.
The simulated snow is a rice-based product, so it's just light and environmentally friendly and doesn't seem to hurt your eyes. The rest of all the dressings are different products, the waxes and different foams and paper and Dacron.
But apparently there's MSG and rice, which can't be good.
No salt.
Basically, it's like takeout.
Tuesday,
On
yeah.
Tuesday, it was Karen's birthday. Yeah, so he's a very old man, so we have to treat him very gingerly. It's not his size. Some people think his height makes him delicate. It's not. It's his age. He's an old man. Look at the chiseled, the etched, the years of experience found on Karen's face. And later you'll be able to see him wearing all of our faces. Is that true?
Yeah,
have you tried me on?
Yes.
Does it feel extra good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Did you feel the dramatic overbite with my
did.
upper lip there?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Don't drool in that mask.
No, I won't.
So can you just prepare me a memo to the art department, please? Can the memo just say that Peter wants to see designs and sketches of all hand props before they appear on set?
Absolutely.
and that Boromir's bag that was presented to me today is rejected as a piece of design.
Boromir's bag?
Boromir's bag is rejected as a piece of design. I don't like it.
Okay.
And that Boromir will need a bag within the next 2 or 3 days, I guess, so that they better come up with some ideas.
Do I have my bag at this stage?
Yeah, I just need to.
We'll drop that down on final.
Because I don't know if I have it at the Moria Mines.
We have this person called the Strike Master. Grant Fahey comes along with his little elves and destroy it. It's a fast process, and they start from the top. They go to the bottom and sweep it out. It's all over. Tragedy. This links us to the satellite. We send UHF over about 3 kilometres, and then we send a satellite, God knows how long that goes. It goes to Wellington, and then it goes into space, and then it comes down again and goes to Tianao at the moment, because that's where the other guys are. And this, come with me, I'll show you. Nope. I just remembered we've got Peter with us today, so we don't have to send it anywhere. That would be stupid.
Kate Blanchett is travelling this way to walk across the river. Hi. Now you've got to go back the way that we come in the mornings, and you'll see the first set of cones, and there's a couple of lights that come straight through the first path.
Bringing Kate in, but we have to drive her in. So Missy is establishing the cleanest way to get Kate to set.
I think Galadriel's all a bit poncy and a bit overexcited with her status.
We don't all need boats. You could have got the bus, use public transport or the subway.
The thing about Peter Jackson is he'll never ask you to do something unless he's done it first. So he's going to go in the water now.
Because it feels screw going.
Deeper and deeper into Sean left. Now we should do a bit of a rehearsal with Sean, just practicing
with his arrow.
Getting used to the arrow. Getting used to being a man with an arrow.
Picking out other people's
All right,
eyes.
stay clear, everybody. Stay clear.
Everybody keep clear. Whatever you do, keep clear.
And then I can hear the Iroquois just like this with the pom-poms cheering me on.
Get there.
Ow! Goes to you! Go Lex! Idiot!
It's better.
Oh, Vigo.
Sorry.
Hey, Vigo, are you on camera? No.
Yeah.
We could have used them. Hey.
Waiting any second, they're going to say I have to go back to work.
The more variety you give them in terms of what you do in takes or what you offer the other actor, the more chance of something interesting happening. If you don't do anything thinking, well, they'll never use it, then you're giving them nothing. And when we're going at the rate we're going here, it doesn't seem like it. Here I am fishing and all that, but that's because I'm waiting between shots. But we don't have much time to get it really right, so the more you can throw out there, the bigger the better. I think I better go learn my lines and forget about this for a while.
You're killing machines. Move forward with the intention that you're going to kill. So keep it fluid, not stilted. Give it the best you can. Thank you.
We have to deliver PG-13, but you know what I would hope is to make it a relatively hard PG-13. So it shouldn't be surprising if the first cut that we present gets an R rating, and we have to go back and trim some shots. That would be the desire, so that we get a PG, but only just sneak in, as it were. We're having to trim some shots, and then of course whatever we trim can go in the DVD edition.
You'll arrive, the others will arrive behind you, Thomas will arrive, and then go. So you're only probably on there for 2 or 3 seconds. And we'll make sure once they'll come straight behind you, and we'll make sure everybody stops safely. People should just move in and grab a goblin.
Yeah.
Grab a goblin. Grab a goblin.
The only difference between our background and our hero costumes for our goblins are pretty much as the hero lightweight chainmail, which was conceptually thought and designed and produced for this particular film. It's a chainmail that's 1/5 the weight of steel, so the character's able to wear the costume for a long period of time without feeling any fatigue from any exhaustion or weight.
Well, this is chainmail, lots of it. This is a Moria Orc suit that I'm working on at the moment. There's 13,000 rings in one of these suits when it's finished, and it takes approximately 3 days to make up one of these suits. Some of the other suits are considerably more because the mail is a lot finer.
Here I am putting together plastic rings, and I love it. Absolutely mad as a meat axe, but I love it.
And for me it's been about 5 months of non-stop. Just the calluses on the ends of the fingers. But we'll get there.
Welcome to the bubble.
Welcome to the bubble.
This has been our home for what, the last year?
2 years.
No, we only had the bubble for about a year.
And the hostage.
Oh, and the hostage, yes, we can't forget the hostage. He still hasn't coughed up his secrets.
This is 5 million rings that we've put together, which is 10 kilometres worth of chainmail if every ring was stood on its edge. The only reason we know this is because the amount of materials that we've ordered through the supplier comes to 10 kilometres worth. There's twice as much chainmail as ever was originally asked for. And you can imagine how we felt when all of a sudden all these stunties are wearing chainmail at Helm's Deep and giving it absolute death. And sort of standing there thinking, well, I hope it all holds together, because it was never originally planned to do that. And so far it has.
With the guys. I'm just going to watch the blood off this one. Right, just do it once more. Let's just do it once more.
Turn around, yep. Turn around.
In the stomach.
Yep.
Stomach. There.
Gotcha.
You all right?
John.
Quick peek.
John.
Right, John?
Yeah.
Well, this afternoon we've got the pleasure of Christopher Lee's company.
Take two.
Quite a few of his scenes with some really bad background noise, fans, you know, humming. So he's coming in to do his ADR, or looping, as they also call it, to replace his dialogue lines.
Power.
Greatest power. No, I think it's power.
You want more?
I think power is the word.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. In a sense,
Most famous.
is the most famous quote of the whole
It is.
work.
And not only that, the way that you're
7 for the dwarf lords and their horses
but
stone,
you're
9 for
also
mortal men doomed to die,
invoking it.
1 for the dark lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to bring them all in the darkness, bind them in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. I mean, that's so famous.
The beauty of cinema is that everybody that sees a film can have their own individual response to it.
That whole trip that we took on all these premieres, when everything around us seemed to be swirling around far too fast and far too crazy, and we were being treated in a way that I certainly was not used to. It was a lovely time.
Premier étage. J'habite à Wellington.
All of Wellington came to the center of town to see us arrive. It was completely overwhelming.
The name of the capital city, Wellington, was actually changed for a day when the film opened there and became Middle-earth.
There must be a rugby match on or something. There's a huge crowd of people here.
You felt that welcome and that love from the people of the fact that we'd made it there, the pride that we'd made it there. And they came out in droves on tops of buildings, you know, just completely there to show us their love. It was unbelievable. And that was special, and really special for Peter. It was a really important moment for him to bring his movie back to the people.
Please welcome the man up on stage, Mr. Peter
Thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you so much. This is the proudest moment to have Wellington turn out and be part of this. Thank you. If any of you see the movie in the next week or two, I hope you enjoy it. Because it was made here, it was made in Wellington.
It's been an unbelievable experience. I said when we started Lord of the Rings, if Lord of the Rings is the last thing I do in the movie business, then that'll be okay.
Thankfully, the fans of Middle-earth have enjoyed the results of our labours over the last 5 years.
It's strange when you think back to getting the part or wanting or going into a room to meet Peter and hoping that you get the role. And looking back on that and seeing where we are now and the response that it's gotten and how well it seems to have been received. Just so thrilled and so grateful to have been part of it.
What you saw evolve was a group of people that were individuals and disparate people who actually became a fellowship through the experience of making the movie.
The danger with any movie that does as well as this one does is that the amount of money it's making and the number of awards that it's got becomes almost more important than the movie itself in people's minds. I look at that as, in a sense, being very much like The Ring and its effect on people. You know, you can kind of forget what we were doing if you get too wrapped up in that.
When I did finally see the movie, I felt a big weight lift off me because I felt like, you know, through everything that we'd all been through, it was so worth it because what Peter did was so beautiful. It makes me feel excited to get to carry on and go down and do more scenes and pickups and looping, and, you know, that we're not through yet. We've still got 2 more movies to produce to the world.
It's still going, 2 or 3 years into the process, we're still getting together with our cast and doing stuff and the crew. And there's people that have been working on it for 5 or 6 years. It's become a lifestyle more than just a job, and everybody has become friends. I mean, everybody that's worked on this film, cast and crew, just have that comfortable shorthand with each other. And it's now just become a really comfortable, friendly, wonderful group of people to be associated with.